sometimes I am guilty of not giving the lower weight classes the attention that they deserve. And one fight that I'm late to the party on is Evgeny Gradovich versus Oscar Valdez, which took place on the Manny Pacquiao-Tim Bradley undercard. And I got to say, I didn't watch that card live, but there were some very, very good performances on that card. I thought Manny Pacquiao was superb in the main event against Tim Bradley. I thought Gilberto Ramirez was fantastic against Arthur Abraham. And I think another one to throw into that mix is actually Oscar Valdez with his performance over Evgeny Gradovich. Let's not forget, up to relatively recently, Evgeny Gradovich was a Fighter of the Year. He was a world champion. He was undefeated. And it was only that with the sort of slick skills of Lee Selby that he finally became unhinged and took his first loss. So I thought this was actually a tough fight on paper for Oscar Valdez, who was very much at prospect stage before stepping up to this competition. To be honest, his performance in this fight suggests that he has now made the leap from prospect to elite world level fighter, and he needs to go right to the conversation of the top of the division when you're talking about featherweights. Following on from this performance, to be frank. I thought there was so much to like from Valdez's performance here. Evgeny Gradovich, he's relatively predictable. He's not the hardest in the world to anticipate what he's going to do. He comes forward, he throws bombs. He's not the most technical. He's not the most defensively minded. His punches aren't the straightest. But he's a force to be reckoned with. The pressure that he can put on you, the hunger behind his assault, and the sort of continued renewed vigour behind the constant aggression is a threat to many, many fighters out there, as proven by his record. And I thought the way that Oscar Valdez dealt with him was exemplary. Evgeny Gradovich, he's known as an aggressive, high-output fighter. We know he throws a lot of punches in the round. And I thought first round, Valdez dealt with him very, very nicely, which was simply circling, boxing on the back foot, trying to establish his jab, trying to pick spots. And he won the first round for me, just boxing on the back foot and, really picking Gradovich off. His anticipation was good, his timing was good, his control of distance was good. He was very much the general in there, despite the fact that Gradovich was the aggressor, and his jab was on point. And his jab was an effective weapon throughout this fight. His jab is really, really decent, actually. And the guy's movement, he's not always moving, but when he does move, when he does use lateral movement and circling, the guy's got a good pair of legs on him. Into the second round, what impressed me is that Valdez started to adapt. Over round one, he'd already showed that he could be very, very effective against Evgeny Gradovich by boxing on the back foot and trying to pick his spots. In round two, he actually changed it up a bit and he brought it to Gradovich a bit. There was fast hands, there was combinations, there was good single punches. We saw him lead with a cross, we saw him throw a hook to the body, we saw him doubling, trebling up his punches, and he showed that he could live with Gradovich. We know that Gradovich can be outboxed and outslicked and outmaneuvered on the back foot and maybe counterpunched, but Valdez showed that he was also strong and capable and offensively sound in terms of bringing it to Gradovich a bit. As the fight went on into the third and fourth rounds, I thought his timing was spectacular. He was able to put such a beating on Gradovich in terms of the variety, number of punches he was landing, that for me, Gradovich was hurt. Going into the third and fourth rounds, there was blood running down his face. He had a big lump emerging. He looked in a very, very bad way. And we saw Valdez, who'd started the fight as a sort of back foot counterpuncher and back foot jabber. We saw him change his style to someone who was throwing short punches inside of the pocket. And I thought his timing was spectacular. Gradovich would lunge in and we would see Valdez, turn a shoulder and bend low, and then sort of turn and bend and then pop up with a short hook. And his timing was, real on point. Several times we saw Gradovich lunge in and get caught hard with a hook. Real good close action work from Valdez. And, it made me think that Valdez has a lot in his armoury. I said this in my Ramirez video, but when I'm looking at a prospect and trying to work out do I think he's a world level fighter? I look for completeness. You know, I'm not totally impressed by pure hand speed. I'm not totally impressed by pure power. But when a guy's got hand speed, power, movement, punch variety, body punching, you know, the ability to fight on the outside and inside on the pocket, yeah, that's when I start to really think that this could be a force to be reckoned with. And you know, his timing was there. There was a few defensive lapses in the fight. I'm not going to say it was punch perfect, but on the whole, he was defensively sound. His leg movement and foot movement kept him out of range that he was comfortable with. As I say, he was turning at an angle and putting his shoulder up. He was ducking, bending at the waist. He was, you know, he was coming under punches, and you know, this guy really impressed me. Don't get me wrong, Gradovich isn't the perfect fighter. Gradovich is a guy you can come up with a game plan to beat. But Gradovich is usually a fighter who you'd expect to give a prospect a very, very tough night. And what interested me is the speed with which Valdez was able to establish dominance over him. And how quickly Valdez was able to convert his game from being cautious and boxing on the back foot to looking to take this guy out. And when he does take him out, you know, it was a nice short hook up close, and it was a big, big punch. And you know, Gradovich was down. I think he was starting to get up on about 6, and the ref waved it off. And to be honest, the ref was right to wave it off. I'm not saying Gradovich was unconscious. I'm not saying he couldn't have fought on, but you know, his face was horrifically marked up. There was big, big lumps coming up on his face. He'd taken a sustained beating, and the fight just wasn't competitive. So, fair stoppage by my estimations. And this Valdez, you know, he's going to be a tough guy to beat. Having said that, the division's stacking up quite nicely. You know, there's a lot of talent in that division. So when I say he's a hard guy to beat, there are big, big fights out there. I know he fought Lomachenko in the amateurs. I know people will be talking Lee Selby and him. You know, it's an interesting one. But this guy, to me, looked like an A-grade talent. Let me know your thoughts. Have you checked him out before? Is my assessment of him correct? Where does he go from here? Many thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, do hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe.